My name is Eleanor Ellie Carter, and if you had told me a month ago that an old painting covered in attic dust would change the entire course of my life, I would have laughed in your face. I was 32, divorced, broke, and living in the house I grew up in. After my mom passed, the place became mine, though it didn't feel like much of an inheritance. It was a weathered colonial-style house in a sleepy Connecticut suburb, peeling paint, cracked windows, and more memories than I cared to deal with. I taught English at the local high school, not because I was passionate about it, but because it was stable, predictable. Most days, I came home exhausted, grading papers with a glass of boxed wine, telling myself I was lucky to have a roof over my head, even if that roof creaked every time it rained, even if it reminded me of the dreams I never chased. I used to want to write books, travel the world, maybe start a little publishing house. But life had other plans. My ex-husband, Jake, had been charming until he wasn't. When the marriage fell apart, so did the rest of my plans. I moved back into my childhood home and buried the wild version of me somewhere beneath practical decisions and past due bills. That Tuesday started like any other. I overslept, spilled coffee on my only decent blouse, and had to mediate a fight between two sophomores over who called who a Shakespearean insult. After school, I stopped by the grocery store to grab frozen dinners and cat food. Yes, I was officially the single woman with a cat stereotype. His name was Booker, and he judged me constantly from atop bookshelves. The only thing different about that day was the letter. It came in a faded blue envelope, addressed in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a simple note. There are things in that house that belong to more than just memory. Start with the attic. No return address. No name. Just that cryptic sentence. I held it for a long time, trying to decide if it was some sort of prank. Maybe an old neighbor. Maybe a mistake. But curiosity had always been my poison. That evening, after feeding Booker and heating up a sad little chicken pot pie, I found myself staring at the narrow pull-down ladder to the attic. The attic was like a sealed time capsule. I hadn't been up there since my mom's funeral. Everything smelled like old wood and mothballs. Boxes were stacked like tombstones, each labeled in my mother's cursive. Christmas 1998, Ellie's high school stuff, Dad's things. I wasn't sure what I was even looking for. Then I saw it, propped against the far wall behind an old rocking horse and my mom's broken sewing machine. A large canvas, wrapped in a moth-eaten cloth. My heart picked up pace as I dragged it out, coughing from the dust. When I unwrapped it, I was met with the most hauntingly beautiful painting I'd ever seen. It was a portrait of a woman, probably in her 30s, with eyes that looked like they were mid-secret. Her expression was soft but knowing, her skin pale like porcelain, and her hair a tangle of wild chestnut waves. The background was dark and smoky, with just a trace of golden light behind her. She wore a sapphire pendant that gleamed even in the dim bulb hanging from the attic rafters. It was unsigned, but there was something about it, something I couldn't explain. It didn't look like the dusty amateur paintings my mom used to buy at garage sales. It looked intentional, like it had a story, a presence. I couldn't stop staring at her eyes. It felt like she knew me. I brought the painting downstairs and set it on the kitchen table. Booker hopped up, sniffed it once, and immediately hissed, something he never did. I laughed nervously and carried him out of the room, pretending not to be unnerved. The next morning, I took a photo of the painting and posted it on Reddit under the art subreddit with the caption, "Found this in my attic. Anyone know the style or era?" I didn't expect more than a couple of comments. But by lunchtime, the post had exploded. Dozens of users replied. Some said it looked 19th century. Others thought it might be European. A few even claimed it resembled the early work of a painter named Aurelio Mancini, someone I'd never heard of. A private message came through that afternoon from a user named ArtHistoryReal189. That's not just any portrait. If it's real, you're holding something that's been missing for decades.
Don't sell it.
Not yet. Get it authenticated. That was the moment I realized my ordinary life, my quiet little world of papers and pot pies, was about to unravel. Because the woman in the painting wasn't just staring at me. She was waiting. By the time I got home from work the next day, my inbox was overflowing with more messages about the painting. Some were curious, a few were condescending, but a handful carried an urgent tone that made my stomach twist. One message stood out. It was from a man named Dr. Marcus Bennett, a professor of art history at Columbia University. His message was concise. Ms. Carter, I saw the image you posted. Please do not attempt to clean, alter, or sell the painting. If it is what I think it is, you may have found something historically significant. I would like to examine it personally. I'm willing to drive up this weekend. Please respond. I stared at the screen, trying to decide if it was legitimate or just someone trying to get their hands on it. After a long breath and a second glass of wine, I replied, cautiously agreeing to meet. It felt surreal. This man from an Ivy League university wanted to come to my house to look at something I'd found wedged between dust and woodworms. But that wasn't the only strange thing. That evening, as I was bringing the painting into the living room to protect it from the attic's humidity, I noticed something odd on the back of the frame. It looked like a seal, melted wax, faintly cracked but still intact. I took a flashlight and leaned in. Embedded within the wax was a single initial, M, and under it, etched faintly into the wood, a date, 1874. 1874. I sat down hard. That couldn't be right. I tried Googling artists with the initial M from the late 1800s, but it felt like falling into a rabbit hole. The name Aurelio Mancini kept popping up again, now connected to phrases like missing work, Italian Romanticism, and presumed destroyed. The more I read, the more unreal it became. According to one source, Mancini's portrait series of The Forgotten Women had been scattered during World War II, with most believed to be lost or stolen. Could my painting be part of that? I barely slept that night. Dreams twisted into shadowy images of the woman in the portrait, whispering in languages I couldn't understand. I woke up drenched in sweat, Booker curled on my chest, his eyes wide and watchful. Friday afternoon, Marcus arrived. He was in his late 50s, tweed jacket, salt and pepper beard, every inch the academic. He stepped into my living room, took one look at the painting leaning against the wall, and went still. For a full minute, he didn't say a word. Finally, he exhaled. "My God," he murmured. "I think it's her." He moved closer, gently inspecting the canvas, the brushwork, the edges. He didn't touch it, not once. Instead, he began to explain. "This style, this use of chiaroscuro, it's unmistakable. Aurelio Mancini was brilliant but tormented. He painted women who'd been erased from history. Lovers, rebels, writers. No names, only stories. This one, I believe she's Isabella Thorne, a British activist who disappeared mysteriously in 1875. He paused, eyes scanning me. "Do you have any idea what you're holding?" I shook my head, my voice caught in my throat. "If this is authentic, Ellie, it could be worth millions. Maybe more." The words hit like a thunderclap. I should have been ecstatic. But I wasn't. Because for every ounce of awe in Marcus's voice, there was also something else. Fear. He asked to take some high-resolution photos and promised to arrange for a colleague at the Metropolitan Museum of Art to examine it under controlled conditions. I told him I needed time to think. He didn't push, but before he left, he said something that lingered long after the door closed. "Be careful who you talk to. Once word gets out, people will come. Not all of them with good intentions." He wasn't wrong. The next morning, a black SUV parked across the street. Didn't move. No plates on the front. I thought I was being paranoid until it returned the next day. Then again the day after that. Someone called my landline at 3:17 a.m. and hung up the moment I answered. Then, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. No stamp, just a note inside. "You don't know what you've found, but others do. Sell it before it's too late." My hands shook. I called Marcus, but he was out of the country now. I emailed his assistant, begging for answers, for help, for something. They replied simply, "We're escalating the matter. Don't let it out of your sight." I started sleeping with the painting in my room. That weekend, someone broke into my house. They didn't take anything. Didn't even go for the TV or the safe. Just ransacked the guest room and attic, looking for something. I filed a police report, but nothing came of it. No fingerprints. No witnesses. Just fear thick in my lungs. At this point, I stopped posting online. I turned off comments. I even disconnected the doorbell cam. It felt like eyes were on me, always. Watching. Waiting. And yet, I couldn't let it go. Something deep inside me told me this wasn't just a painting.
It was a story buried by time.
A secret screaming to be unearthed. And I was the only one who had it. I wasn't sleeping much anymore. Every creak of the house felt amplified. Every passing car had me peeking through the blinds. But I still couldn't bring myself to get rid of the painting. Not out of greed. Though yes, the thought of millions could solve everything, but because of what I felt whenever I looked at her. That woman in the portrait. Isabella. Like she had waited all this time just to be seen again. To be heard. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the painting. "What am I supposed to do with you?" I whispered. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was listening. I made a plan. Not a good one, but it was something. First, I'd take it to Boston, to Marcus's colleague at the MFA, Dr. Emily Graves, whom he'd mentioned in his last email. According to Marcus, she was the only one who could run spectral imaging and pigment analysis without alerting anyone else. Quiet, careful, trusted, he'd said. That was enough for me. I wrapped the painting in a blanket, tucked it into the trunk of my aging Corolla, and set off just before dawn. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I kept my phone on airplane mode the entire drive. When I arrived at the museum staff entrance, Emily was waiting. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, no nonsense. She didn't waste time with small talk. She led me through service corridors until we reached a private restoration lab. I watched nervously as she laid the canvas on a clean white table under bright lighting. She examined it for hours, using gloves, lenses, and lights that made the painting glow in hues I'd never seen before. I barely moved. Finally, she stepped back. "It's real," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Not only is it Mancini, but this may be the missing thorn portrait scholars have hunted for over 50 years. You said it was in your attic." I nodded, still numb. Whoever left it there wanted it hidden. The pigment, the canvas weave, the brushwork, all consistent with 1874. And that seal. She gestured toward the wax. "It's from the Society of Lucent Arts, a secretive collectors' guild. Disbanded after the war, but their artifacts, they fetch insane prices. You're holding a ghost story in paint." She handed me a small folder. Inside was a photocopy of a page from an old journal. There's a rumor that Mancini's Forgotten Women series was more than symbolic. That each woman died under strange circumstances. Some believe he was documenting disappearances. Or orchestrating them. I felt my stomach drop. "You're saying he might have?" "I'm saying no one knows. But collectors love a good myth. And this one has it all. Lost history, death, mystery. Which means you're in danger." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Don't take it to auction." "Not yet. Let me make some calls. There are people who will protect it. Protect you." Her words should have comforted me. Instead, they terrified me. Because danger, now, wasn't just a vague feeling. It was real. I drove back that night, checking my rearview mirror more times than I could count. At a rest stop, I noticed a man watching me from across the parking lot. Maybe he was just stretching his legs. Maybe not. I didn't wait to find out. Back home, I called the only person I could trust. Daniel. He'd been my best friend since college. We dated briefly, crashed and burned, but the friendship remained. He lived in Brooklyn now, a freelance tech consultant with a deep love for conspiracy theories and encrypted networks. I hadn't told him anything yet, but I needed his help. When I finished explaining everything over the phone, there was silence on the line. Then, "Jesus, Ellie. You just found the Da Vinci Code in your attic." "I'm serious."
"So am I."
"This is bigger than you think. There's a whole black market for things like this. People have been killed for less." He drove up the next morning. By noon, we had a plan. We moved the painting to his encrypted storage unit outside the city, secure, off-grid, and temperature-controlled. He installed a surveillance system at my house and gave me a burner phone, teaching me how to use it. We agreed to limit all contact to encrypted messaging and avoid social media completely. Ellie, he said as he adjusted the last camera, we're not just protecting some painting. You're the only link to its origin now. That makes you valuable and a target. It all felt like something out of a spy novel. But the fear was real. And so was the obsession that had started to grow in me. I had to know who the woman in the painting was. Really? I started digging. Archives. Historical records. Old letters from British abolitionist groups. I found mention of Isabella Thorne in a 19th century pamphlet. A woman who vanished during a protest in Italy. Her body was never found. Rumors of espionage. A lover who fled. And a painter who was reportedly obsessed with her. The more I found, the clearer it became. The painting wasn't just about her. It was hers. And she wanted to be found. Then came the letter. It arrived in another blue envelope. Same handwriting as before. But this time it read, "You've stirred the past, Eleanor. Some stories stay buried for a reason. Walk away. Last warning. No return address. No fingerprints. Just dread, crawling up my spine." But I wasn't walking away. I was all in now. It was a Wednesday night when everything came to a head. Daniel had gone back to Brooklyn for a client emergency, and I was alone in the house again. The painting was safely locked away in his unit, but I still felt like eyes were on me. That kind of gut-deep paranoia you can't shake. I sat by the window with Booker in my lap, listening to the wind whistle through the trees. That's when the power cut. Every light in the house snapped off at once. I froze. It wasn't a stormy night. No rain. No wind strong enough to knock anything out. Just silence. Stillness. Too still. I grabbed my phone and flashlight. No signal. As I stepped into the hallway, a faint sound came from the back door. A click. The lock. Someone was inside. My blood turned to ice. I didn't think. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed the heaviest object I could find, a cast iron skillet. Then I flicked off my flashlight and crouched in the dark, trying to steady my breathing. Footsteps crept down the hallway.
Slow.
Measured. Intentional. Then a voice. "Miss Carter, you've had your fun. But this belongs to history now." It was calm. Male. American. I didn't recognize it. "I'm not here to hurt you," the voice continued, moving closer. "You are never the target. Just the means." My heart hammered in my chest. The steps came around the corner, and I swung the skillet. I hit something hard. There was a grunt and the thud of a body falling to the floor. I didn't wait to check who it was. I sprinted past and out the front door, barefoot, down the driveway, and into the street. 2 houses down, I banged on my neighbor's door until they answered. The cops arrived 10 minutes later. Whoever the man was, he was gone by then. But he left something behind. On my kitchen counter was a flash drive. I stared at it in the evidence bag at the police station. The detective handling the case, Officer Miriam Klein, had kind eyes but a skeptical tone. "You sure it wasn't a burglary gone wrong?" she asked. "No," I said, firm. "He didn't want my TV or jewelry. He said the painting belongs to history." They took my statement and promised to investigate, but I could tell they didn't fully believe me. A few whispered words about art obsession and stress floated past me as I left. Back at Daniel's the next day, we opened the flash drive. It contained one file. No encryption. No name. Just a video. We played it. It was old. Grainy. Black and white, but clearly digitized from reel-to-reel film. The footage showed a group of men gathered around a wooden crate. They were in military uniforms, American, possibly 1940s. A warehouse. Dust motes in the air. One man opened the crate and pulled out my painting. My breath caught. He turned it toward the camera. Behind him, another officer jotted something down on a clipboard. Then the man holding the painting said something. The audio was faint, but Daniel boosted it. "Mancini, piece confirmed. Subject: Thorne. Orders are clear. Do not transfer to private hands. Too dangerous. Record and seal. The video cut out. The timestamp on the file was 1946. Too dangerous? What the hell did that mean? We sat in stunned silence. Daniel finally said what I couldn't. The government had this, and someone wanted it buried. That night, Marcus called me on an encrypted line. He sounded panicked. Ellie, you need to leave. Now. What are you talking about? There's a buyer. He's not from the academic world. He's dangerous. Private. Extremely wealthy. He's been searching for this painting for years. How did he even know I had it? There was a pause. Then, he's part of the old Lucent circle. He has ears everywhere. I could barely get the words out. What does he want with it? I don't know. But there's a legend surrounding Mancini's final works. That they were cursed. Tied to the women's spirits. That anyone who tries to own them meets a terrible end. I didn't believe in curses. Not really. But I believed in obsession. And I believed in danger. And somehow, I did believe that the woman in the painting didn't want to be owned again. I'm done, I told Marcus. I'm not selling it. I'm not giving it to collectors.
I want it where it belongs. Public.
Protected. He paused. Then prepare for a fight. And that's exactly what I got. A week later, the buyer made contact through a lawyer. Offered $8.5 million, no questions asked. Full anonymity. Said if I didn't accept within 3 days, the offer would vanish with grace. I declined. The next day, my car was vandalized. Then my job restructured me out. My landlord sent a sudden eviction notice. They were trying to corner me.
Silence me.
But it didn't work. I sent the painting to the Metropolitan Museum anonymously, using Daniel's network, with documents, records, and Marcus's authentication. 3 days later, the museum issued a press release. Long-lost Aurelio Mancini were confirmed. Subject: Isabella Thorne. To be placed on permanent public display. That night, I got a final envelope. It read, "You've made your choice. So have we. Watch your shadows." It's been 6 months since the painting was unveiled at the Met. I stood quietly in the back corner of the gallery that day, my hoodie pulled low, heart pounding as the crowd gathered in reverent silence around her. Isabella's eyes were exactly as I remembered, piercing alive. Like she knew she had finally been seen. The plaque read, "Portrait of Isabella Thorne, circa 1874, by Aurelio Mancini. Believed to be part of the Lost Forgotten Women series. Donated anonymously." They didn't know the whole story. Not the threats, not the nights I lay awake fearing a knock on the door. Not the feeling that I was walking around with a piece of someone else's unfinished business on my shoulders. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that she was free now. Free from the attic. From the lies. From the shadows. I watched as a little girl, no older than 7, tugged on her mother's coat and pointed to the painting. "She looks strong," she said. Like she's telling a secret. I smiled through the lump in my throat. That's exactly what Isabella had been doing. Telling a secret. One no one wanted to hear, until now. I moved out of the old house shortly after. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. Daniel helped me relocate upstate, to a quiet town near the Hudson River. I found a cozy fixer-upper with a garden and started fresh. I also started writing. I'd always dreamed of becoming an author, but fear held me back. Fear of rejection, of failure, of being ordinary. But after what I'd lived through, nothing scared me the same way anymore. I wrote about the painting, not the exact truth, of course, but a novel inspired by it. The story of a woman erased by time, and the young woman who found her voice again through a forgotten portrait. Publishers bit fast. Maybe it was the mystery. Maybe the emotion. Maybe the timing. Either way, it's coming out this fall. Titled The Eyes in the Attic. And yes, there's a dedication. To Isabella. You were never forgotten. Not really. Marcus left academia. Last I heard, he's working with an international provenance team, tracking lost art, giving voice to stolen stories. We still email sometimes. He never forgave himself for the danger I was placed in, but I did. He saved me, even when I didn't realize I needed saving. Emily Graves became somewhat of a public figure. She did interviews, wrote essays, and helped spearhead an initiative to digitally archive lost female subjects of 19th century art. She never once mentioned my name. A promise kept. Daniel is still Daniel. Still loud, paranoid, brilliant. He visits every other weekend, brings whiskey, and wires my entire house with alarms every few months, just in case. He laughs, but there's always a flicker of tension in his eyes. Like he knows it's not fully over. And maybe it isn't. Because 2 weeks ago, another letter arrived. No envelope. No return address. Just a slip of parchment slid under my door during the night. It read, "One portrait has spoken, but there are more still silenced. The past is never really past, Eleanor. It only waits for someone to ask the right questions." Below the message was a sketch. Crude, hastily drawn, but unmistakably Mancini. A woman standing before a window, her face blurred, but her hand raised in what looked like a plea. I didn't show it to anyone. Not yet. I've kept it folded in the back of my journal, alongside news clippings, photos, and scribbled notes from the last year. Sometimes I take it out and stare at it, wondering what it means. Is it a warning? A map? A beginning? I don't know. But I do know this. The painting found me for a reason. And maybe, just maybe, there are more stories waiting in the attic. In forgotten trunks. In abandoned galleries and dust-choked archives. Stories that demand to be told. I used to think I was just a small-town girl with nothing special to offer the world. But now I see that being curious, being open, is a kind of bravery too. So I've started looking. Not just for paintings, but for truths. For voices that history buried. For ghosts who don't want to stay silent anymore. And if you ever find yourself staring at something old, something faded and strange, don't look away. Look closer. Because sometimes what we think is junk in the attic is the story that changes everything.